Bob Avila was a big mentor of mine as a young, horse trainer growing up in Australia, and eventually as an adult became a close friend of mine. I remember looking at him in the magazines, I remember just all the photos, the articles. Hell, I used to subscribe to his magazine, Ride with Bob Avila, I think it was called. He was just an icon, from what I loved about Bob is that he was one of the very, very few trainers that had crossed over many disciplines. He won the Reign of Futurity, he won the Cow Horse Futurity, he won the World's Greatest Horseman. He could show a cutter, he could show a pleasure horse, he could show a halter horse. He was kind of the last of a dying breed of horse trainer that had to do it all, especially in the beginning years to survive. Now, the Western industry has got so specialized that you'll see very, very few trainers that do multiple events anymore. And I used to love the fact that he could take certain horses to the Cow Horse Futurity, where you're training them in reining, cutting, and go down the fence, and you're in a snaffle, and then 6 weeks later, they'd be back at the Reining Futurity, one-handed, in a bridle, neck reining. That's extremely hard to do. He did it, Bob Avila did it, Todd Bergen did it, Todd Crawford did it, Randy Paul did it. There's about 4 or 5 guys that had the talent, ability, and balls to do that. But that is extremely rare. And you haven't seen it much in the last 15 years at all, okay? It takes a special horse and more than anything, a special trainer to be able to pull off both events like that. Bob always said to me, he said, I always felt when I trained my reiners on cattle, it made them better reiners. Bob Avila very much trains the reining industry, especially, through Bumanick, 1992, 93, 94, 95, all those years, 92 to like 97. He very much changed the reining horse industry in their rollbacks. Those horses before Avila came along used to do these big looped out rollbacks where they'd slide to a stop and they'd turn to do a rollback and the horse would jump out about 6 feet and go back the other way. Avila was the one that when it made him slide to a stop and then he'd look over his shoulder, lay that outside rein, those horses would crack over their hocks and do a 180-degree turn and basically come out on the same set of tracks they went into. That changed rollbacks forever in the reining horse industry. The way his horses bridled up and were soft and the way they do a lead change, hind first lead change. And, before that where they were throwing them over here and throwing them over there in a lead change. He just changed that whole sport. But he always told me for years, he said the best reiners he ever had were the ones that he trained on cows as well. So I really admired him for that. And everything about Avila was just first class. He never cut any corners anywhere, from washing his truck and trailer to never going down the road in a dirty truck and trailer to his barn to sweeping it. You could eat off his barn floor. Okay, you could see your horses, you could see your face in the horse's coat because it got brushed that much. He was big about low numbers, but high quality. Don't get 50, 60, 70 horses in training, and now it's such a big mess you can't keep a track of all. He kept 25 to 35 horses in training at any one time, so his numbers stayed relatively low. Between him and 2 or 3 of his great assistants, they could really do a good job on those horses. I don't think we're ever going to see another guy like Avila. He was kind of one of a kind. He was old school. Especially now with all the specialization of horses that's going on now, you'll never see, I don't think, I'm going to say never's a long time, but I think it's going to be very rare to see a trainer to be able to have that much success in different sports. Todd Bergen won the Reign Futurity. Todd Bergen won the Cow Horse Futurity. Okay, there's been a handful of trainers that have crossed over in different events. Okay, and won the Futurities. Not one trainer to date has won the National Cutting Horse Association Futurity, the National Reining Horse Association Futurity, or the National Cow Horse Association Futurity. There's been 3 that have done 2. Avila and Todd Bergen have won the Cow Horse and the Reining Futurity, but not the Cutting Futurity. I think it was Dale Livingston won the Reining Futurity and maybe the Cutting Futurity, but didn't win the Cow Horse. But not to date, not one trainer has won all 3 major futurities in the Western industry because it's extremely hard to do. But Avila was one of a kind. If you haven't had a chance, go listen to his podcast. One of the greatest highlights of my career was interviewing him for my podcast and really learning about his life and his story and what made him successful and why he thought the way he did. It's been by far our most popular podcast on the Uncut and Real Raw podcast. It's been by far the most popular podcast. I listen to it regularly because every time I listen to it, I seem to pick up something else about it, something else that I loved about Bob or admired about him and so forth. So If you haven't listened to it, make sure you go and do it.